Hey, what's going on, people? This is your man, Derek Terry, host of I'm Not Complaining, I'm Just Saying, where if you're going to complain, bring some solutions to the table. Hey, we have a very, very exciting show today. We're going to be talking about restorative practices. My special guest is Miss Robin McNair. She's a restorative practices practitioner, and it's rare that I actually read their bio in its entirety. But I really, just before I introduce her, I want to read it to you to let you know that typically the guests that I bring in bring a wealth of experience. They also bring a wealth of knowledge that to address topics. And one of the topics we're going to be talking, well, the topic we're going to talk about today is restorative practices and what it is. I'm going to let her explain it, but in a nutshell, it is an alternative to dealing with behavior within students and schools, being proactive. And a lot of times, you have people or organizations or whatever it may be that tend to put all the energy and the focus on the negative behavior on outside entities that really don't have a direct impact or a direct cause for why they're behaving that way, because there's a lot of other factors that come in play. And for whatever reason, a lot of people, become these experts, but they haven't really been in the trenches. I look at it like educator. I was an educator for 18 years. Some people may have taught for 10, 15, whatever, but I don't know where you taught at. I started teaching in Baltimore City. So restorative practices to some degree is not anything new to me because we did some of this. Didn't know we were doing it, but we did some of this where we were trying to be proactive. It wasn't school police's fault for them making behavior. It wasn't them. I look at it like this. If a student cusses you out or they want to fight you, something is going on with that student. But there has to be a consequence for inappropriate behavior. It can't just, we're gonna slap our hands with it and do anything and don't nothing with it. In some cases, unfortunately, students have to be arrested if they commit violent crimes. And we're gonna be talking about this all throughout the show. So I'm gonna go ahead and read her bio, and then we're gonna bring her in. So once again, my special guest is Robin McNair. She's a restorative practice practitioner. Need to drink something. Hold up. Sorry about that. She received restorative practices training from Restorative Practice Strategies and Community Justice for Youth Institute. She also has a certification in Restorative Justice from Simon Fraser University. Her work involves assisting schools with the implementation of whole restorative practices, providing training for educators, administrators, and community members while also conducting circles when requested. Other experiences include chairing meetings for associations on the local, state, and national level, as well as community peacekeeping and conflict circles for city officials, training in just and equitable learning environments. Ms. McNair is the owner of the Restorative Collective, formerly the Restorative Classroom, and has served on her state commission for the School to Prison Pipeline Restorative Practices, Arlington County Schools Restorative Justice Work Group Review Board, and has participated on several panels focused on eradicating the school to prison pipeline and stopping girl push out, safe schools for girls of color. Okay, so like I said, I know we may have somewhat of a disagreement when we talk about school to prison pipeline, but hey, that's why we're here to talk and bring some solutions. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna bring in Miss Robin McNair, and welcome, welcome, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
I got to fix this screen. For some reason, this is it's not showing. I don't know why it's looking like this. It's supposed not at your screen. It's like it should be. It's like it has me small for some reason. I don't know why. We got to fix that. Wait a minute, y'all. Yeah, we got technical difficulties. I don't know what's going on. Oh, here it is. View. There we go.
In society.
There we go. All right, that's better. That's better. And I'm saying you the spotlight. Don't get me wrong, you the spotlight. But it had me like this real small up top. And I was like, wait a minute, I barely can see me. So, but anyways, now that we cleared all the technical difficulties, welcome to you, Robin. Welcome. And like I told the audience, we are going to be talking about restorative practices. What I found very impressive about your bio, and it's, I guess, debatable in Charles County, it's the school to prison pipeline. And how, at least in my county, they want to say it's the SROs or the school resource officers' fault because of the school to prison pipeline, which I disagree with. That's just me. But we'll talk about that. So tell us about Robin McNair. Tell us about you.
Ooh, wow. What can I say? I am a 29-year veteran educator, and I started out in the 90s, of course, in North Carolina. And I decided that I wanted to teach young people in an urban setting. So I moved to Washington, D.C., and I've been here since 1993. I've been in the classroom, and I felt like it was my life's work to be in the classroom until I retired, until I found restorative justice practices. And I started doing work around restorative practices with training and supporting other educators along the lines of, being a restorative practitioner as well. And I took a job actually being the coordinator of restorative practices. So it's almost like it fell in my lap. And it transformed my life, and it really improved my relationships, not only with the young people I taught, but also with the adults that I interacted with, and even in my home with my son.
Okay.
So, I always tell them, I am restorative. I am restorative. So, yep, that's who Robin McNair is.
Okay. I know one of the things that I've learned as a former educator, and I was, 20 years and 18 as a special educator, with my primary focus dealing with the ED environment, or the emotional disturbed environment. So in retrospect, I was doing restorative practices way back in the day and not really knowing it. So, but what I realized, and I want to first lay the foundation, clear this perception that some people get confused with the term discipline and punishment. Can you explain to us what is the difference, and the significant difference? Because I don't think a lot of people understand. They think discipline and punishment are the same thing, and they're not. So can you explain to us what's the difference between discipline and punishment?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because in our society, we have basically turned the word discipline to make it synonymous with punishment. So when we think about discipline, let's go back to punishment. When we think about punishment, we look at, okay, there's been a violation and we need to do something to teach this person a lesson. So usually punishment is inflicting some type of harm because this person may have caused harm. So it's almost like, I'm doing this to, put you in so much discomfort that you won't have a desire to do it again. So it's like a deterrent. If someone sees you go through this negative experience based on what you have done, then they won't want to do it. And we know that that's not the truth. But discipline basically comes from the word disciple. And a disciple is one who is being taught. So discipline basically means to teach. And when there has been a situation in which someone has done something wrong or someone has caused harm, then when you discipline that person, you're actually kind of leading them and guiding them into what could be an alternative way to do it. You're basically letting them know that this is not the correct way, but this is the correct way. And you're teaching them what to do differently the next time by allowing them to see the why that's incorrect or inappropriate to do.
And earlier I had mentioned the school to prison pipeline, and where some people feel, well, if the student is getting arrested, basically you're setting them up. In my mind, I disagree, because if they're getting arrested for a violent crime, but you're disciplining them, that means that they're going to somewhere, whereas juvie, hopefully not jail, in most cases is juvie, probation, and you're taking them through what they did wrong to understand why they did wrong. That's where restorative practices would come into play. So with that, what is restorative practice? And if also if you want to shed light on, it's up to you, or whether or not school resource officers are the reason why kids are going to jail, or you're setting them up to go to jail, particularly, our Black people, our Black youth.
All right. Thank you for that question. So my first response to that would be, why does a young person need to be put in handcuffs and taken to juvie because of a particular wrongdoing? And let's just call it a violent wrongdoing, without really understanding the situation, the circumstances, the why. So that's not to say that there's never a reason in which a young person needs to um, go to a separate place for something. But when we look at most of the reasons our young people are being arrested in schools, some of our young people are put into juvenile facilities. It's not for violent crimes for the most part. Sometimes young people are being arrested because they are just fighting, or they're being arrested because they've been late to school, being arrested for truancy. So you arrest them first, you give them this punishment first, and then you want to go back and then talk about what they could have done differently, after you've already taken them through this traumatic experience. So when we talk about restorative practices, which comes from restorative justice, which is a philosophy around whenever someone commits a wrongdoing and causes harm, anybody who has been impacted by that harm comes together along with that person that caused the harm and address it. And then you talk about what the harm was, how people have been impacted, and what everyone needs to make it right. And it's not just about the person who's been harmed and what they need to feel whole again or to be restored, but it's also about the person that has done the wrongdoing. What needs are they missing, or what needs do they have that are that's unmet, that they need as well? So you're really talking about the needs of everybody involved, and that's where your restorative justice comes into play. And the restorative practices is the process. It's a distinct process that you use to work through that particular incident and harm.
Now, question: what do you say? And I'm just playing hypothetical, and actually, it's not hypothetical because I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
To that student, whatever reason, they're having a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
You looked at me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You disrespected me, and I bang you in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Then you separate them. Police comes in, and you got that parent that says, "Hell no, arrest him." That cop has a legal obligation to arrest that child. Do you agree? They can't say, "Well, we're not going to do it." If that parent says, I'm pressing charges against that child who knocked my child out, what is that cop to do?
All right. So using the word legal, do that parent have the legal right? The parent, yes, has a legal right based on how our society is set up. But if this school is a restorative school in which they practice restorative practices and it's a way of being in that school, then the cop or the SRO would not be the first person that the school will call because of this situation. It would be a situation in which they would set up some type of restorative conference or restorative circle, and they would bring in the two people who had the conflict. And of course, parents would be.
Okay, and that was the key. That was the key, whether or not the parents would be involved. So from that point of view, I can see what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to cut you off. The reason I bring this up, because I've been trying to have these civil conversations with people where I see where you're coming from
Mm-hmm.
with not having SROs, but then I see it from a point, if the SROs are not the problem,
Mm-hmm.
then why are you going to get rid of them? If they are the problem, then maybe the school needs to buy into restorative practices. Because believe me, in Charles County, their restorative practices is weak, meaning that they take bits and bits of it, and the other stuff they put it away. It's almost like back in the day where No one wanted to have mentors in their school. You know why? Because at that point, you're identifying you have a problem. And no school wants to be labeled as, oh, we got a problem. So what I set up, there's a video that actually you sent me that I want to look at and I want to talk about. So let me see if I can set it up. Ooh, there it is. Okay. And maximize the screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and play this. Feel free to take a drink.
They're giggling, they're laughing. And there's just like a lot of kind of like giddy, intense energy.
For what?
And then the circle and their relationships with each other actually kind of like quiet something in them and allow them to be more present for each other.
When we do circles here, before we do the circles, we sit down and like plan the opening ceremony. My great hope is to laugh as much as I cry, to get my work done and try to love someone. And I have enough courage to accept the love in return. Maya Angelou. In high school especially, like we don't have enough, connections with each other. Sometimes, everybody just all focus on the work and, stress at home and stuff like that. And circles create a space where people can talk about their feelings, about how they're doing home life. Now we will review our class values. The first one was being open. The other one is respect. When we share our values, we respect each other and stuff like that. Because, we all are still humans and people get sensitive sometimes. So we're trying to make sure, that everybody feels comfortable and doesn't get their feelings hurt. Okay, now we will share an object that relates to hope. I have my I Heart Being Black bracelet because I hope that everybody is proud of who they are. I got this Play to Win thing from a boyfriend. We exchange bands all the time. And this brings hope because, it just keeps me going.
My mom made this necklace for me, and it represents hope because she never had time to do anything for herself. They're being asked to be vulnerable to a group of people, which is kind of like antithetical to what it's like to be a teenager, which is what's the best way to hide right now. So the first thing that I do is I share as deeply as I possibly can. I feel like if I can share deeply and from my heart and listen really attentively to other students, they're looking at me to see how I'm behaving.
I have you guys give me a lot of hope and stuff like that. Our advisory is like a family. I've been through police brutality, tragedies, and stuff like that. And instead of me being depressed about life, I know I can come in and talk to my community.
Wow. Looking at that really brought back some memories of my very first year, actually my second year, when I was teaching at Lake Clifton. And I normally did this every Monday, is because I knew something traumatic would happen over the weekend. And they would come in this antsy and whatever. So we would have a circle where we say, hey, tell us what you did this weekend. Mm-hmm. And I remember to this day that there was a student who said his cousin got killed. And I was like, what happened? You know how it is, Mr. Terry. He just, got killed. The cop, he didn't even give him a chance. And I was like, whoa. So he came in with this hatred of cops. And what I did, I shared my story, how I used to be. Because I used to get harassed a lot just for stupid stuff, riding, walking, running. And I'm like, what did I do? But I had a mouth on me too. So that probably didn't help. But it didn't make what the cop did justifiable. So what I tried to make them realize is that you have bad apples, but don't let those bad apples ruin it for you to establish relationships with police, because somewhere down the road you're gonna need, just like with teachers. I'm saying you feel empowered and to trust to talk to me, but you may not talk to those other teachers because you had a bad experience with them. So looking at that video, kind of explain to us what we saw.
So what you saw there was a community building circle, because there are two types of circles, or two categories, if you will. And what you saw there was a community building circle in which that educator, excuse me, that school has laid the foundation of building relationships. And your community building circles are intended to do just that. They offer spaces where you can have deep, authentic conversations, where people can share themselves authentically. And it's all based around values and what we value and what values we bring into the space, so we can be in relationship with one another in a positive way. So, and that's what a lot of young people are missing in schools, because we are a tech society now, but those in-person, deep, authentic relationships is what's missing. So what you saw there was a was a community building circle.
Okay.
And of course, like you shared about the young man coming in, and he had all this anger towards the policeman because of the experiences that he's seen. There have been community building circles in the way of healing circles, where we have brought in, when I say we, I mean the restorative community, have brought in policemen along with young people, and they're able to sit in circle and talk about and hear each other's experiences, perspectives, and kind of understand why this police may look at them this way. And then the police would also hear why these teenagers feel this way about them. And then they work on what they can do to work together. Now that's in a district that is committed to restorative justice and restorative practices, and making sure they're including the community.
And that's a key thing that you bring up. We talk about buy-in, training, buy-in, training. Now, I'm going to give you a situation of a military style, Southern raised person such as myself, who had, and this is a real situation. This is a real situation where student A came into the class, had a bad day. I was like, they were talking. I said, hey, you need to stop talking. Let's go ahead and do our warm up. And I don't like, I respect the space, but I wasn't close enough to where I was invading the space, but I wasn't far enough to where they knew I was there. And what I said, hey, you need to go ahead and start doing your work. That student's response was, get the hell out my face before I smack you. Well, I don't know if she said smack because it was a female. She said smack. And I looked there like, this is me. Who the hell are you talking to? I said, you need to stop your little, and I said little ass outside so we can have a conversation. Now, I don't know if that probably wasn't the right way to address it. But if I didn't have the discipline, which I did, I had the discipline not to say whatever. But imagine if that student had slapped me or slapped another teacher. We've seen teachers just go off. How would this situation be handled in a restorative practices environment?
All right. So, I spoke about the two types of circles. So I spoke about community building. The other type of circle is your restorative circle, in which there has been an incident or there has been some type of harm that has taken place. So in that particular incident, of course, that young person who assaulted you would definitely need to be removed from the space, so that young person can calm down. And so you can actually take a break and calm down if you needed to do so as well. But there needed to be a time in which you and that young person would be brought back together, along with whomever may have been impacted. She could have someone as a support person there. You can also have someone there, a support person for you. But for the most part, it would just be you and the young lady, and someone who would lead you all through a restorative conversation around what happened.
But that's if you are practicing restorative practices within the school.
Yes,
And where in
now,
most cases, you may not have that. So where am I going to get this person to come in, especially when we already have a teacher shortage? And what I will say, in case some people got confused, I don't hit women. I don't condone anybody hitting women.
right,
Okay. I hit a man in a heartbeat, you hit me. But violence should be your last resort. But we're talking about kids here. We're talking about kids. Where a lot of times it's restraining. Now I have restrained because I was certified to do it. So I've restrained many, male and female, because of what they've done, because I was trained in it. Put the anger to the side and try to calm the student down. So, but what happens if you don't have that in place? What is? I'm really kind of get it out there to the teachers that, you know what, we don't have restorative practices. What do you expect me to do in this situation?
right. Well, in that situation, if you don't use restorative practices, like if the school does not use restorative practices and she slaps you, then it's really up to you. If you know what, okay, she assaulted me. She was angry. She was upset. Um, you could go one or two ways. You know what? I just need to write her up and get her sent out. Or you can say, you know what? Let me see if I can have a conversation with this young person to see exactly what happened. And usually in a restorative process, you and the other person sit with someone else to have that conversation. Um, so hopefully you would have somebody in the building who has been trained in restorative practices and can lead you all through that restorative circle. If that's not the case, and you feel, that you're ready to have a conversation with this young person and kind of talk about, okay, what happened, and what were you thinking when you did that? Okay, so what do you think needs to be done?
Okay.
For you, slap me that way, I had a situation very similar to that. The young girl didn't slap me, of course, but she didn't want to do her work, and she cursed at me and everything. Um, Called me that beautiful name that most women don't like to be called. And I took a deep breath and I said, "So you're not going to do your work?" And she said, "No." I said, "Okay." And I continued to teach my class. After the bell rang, I had her to stay. I said, "I need you to stay." She stayed, and we had a restorative conversation around what just took place. And I asked her, "Look, you're not going to just get a zero on this assignment. So what are you going to do?" And because I had established a restorative classroom, she was ready to deal with it. And I found out why she kind of freaked out when I told her to move from one group to another. I found out the backstory. But it could have been very easy for me to say, "You know what? You just called me out of my name. Get out of my classroom." That would have been me about 6 years ago. Oh, who you talking to? You talking about Southern? Oh yeah, honey, I'm a Southern military brat. So she was gonna be gone. But I knew that, you know what? It's not about me, the adult. It's about what this child is going through. So yep, I'm embarrassed. And she disrespected me. Oh yeah, she did. But she's a child. Let me find out what's going on.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the physical thing, that gets a little different, because it is physical.
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents out there, because either they look at it as though, this is my child,
Mm-hmm.
but then you're not looking at the child where an alleged crime may occur, whether it's striking a student, stealing their cell phone, um, just something that would make a parent upset. Where what is a parent to do? I was perfectly blunt. Let something happen to my son where now I got to take off work, or something got to come out of my pocket because somebody else's child didn't know how to behave. Oh, you're going to be disciplined. It may not be punishment, but you're going to be disciplined. You need to know there's a consequence. Yeah, I understand stuff might be going on, but we're talking about the real world. Everybody, to some degree, everybody got mental issues. I don't care who you are. Something mentally disturbs you. But the thing about it is that you have to know that there is a consequence for what you do, but you don't have to be punished for it.
Right.
You don't
And
have to be punished for it.
yeah, to that point, Mr. Terry, if I could definitely say, a lot of people who are critics of restorative practices always talk about, oh, it don't prepare students for the real world, or it's touchy-feely, and you know, you need to punish students. But in reality, restorative practices can be harder than just a regular punishment, or just lock them up and throw away the key, because it is about holding children, holding people accountable for the wrongdoing that they have done. So restorative practice does not take away, a quote unquote consequence, but it does hold the child accountable. But what it also does, it allows the child or the person to be the one to say, okay, what can I do to show accountability for what I've done?
Now,
Because when we're constantly telling students what we're going to do to them, and we're constantly doing things to them because of their wrongdoing, do they really learn inwardly? But when they play a part in what they're going to do to hold themselves accountable, then that is more of an internal change. That produces a more internal change within the
now,
child.
how important is it for the practitioner to be involved in either that one-on-one circle or that classroom circle? How important is it for them to be in it? Because I know for me,
Mhm.
because I provided my personal experience, they said, you know what, Mr. Terry's a real person, meaning that, you know what, he's not like the typical TV teacher. They got a life too. They got issues too. So how important is it?
It's very important. Just quickly, remember you said that when she kind of went off on you, you kind of went off on her too.
Mhm.
And that happens, why? Because we're human. We're just human. And many people think, well, adults aren't human. They don't get triggered. But like you say, we all have a neuroplastic brain, and our brain remembers everything. So adults can be triggered as well. So it's very important for adults to sit in circle with other adults. It's important for adults to sit in circle with students so they can become human to students, so students can learn empathy and learn who that teacher really is. But what happens is when you sit in circle, because everyone is seen in circle, it gives you the opportunity to be visible to everybody. You can't hide in a circle. So if you're constantly put in a place where you have to practice your values, where you have to practice being vulnerable, and where you have to practice listening to other people and having empathy for other people, then that continues to stay with you, where you can become more restorative. So I'm able to have restraint when I see this child, flicking off or going off. I'm able to say, you know what? It's not about me. It's about whatever that child is going through.
Yeah, and it comes through maturation. I know, and
Mhm.
I use basketball. I'm a basketball ref.
Okay.
So the amount of restraint that I have to possess is ridiculous.
Mm.
I hear stuff. People think I don't hear, but I don't turn around, I hear. What it becomes numb after, and it becomes numb after a while. They may say, you need six eyes, because I wear glasses too, or that was a bad call, whatever it may be, but it still takes a level of restraint. There are times, very small times, where I have a conversation with someone to explain to them, this is what I saw, blah, 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 but it's not a lot. But remember, we had talked about training and buy-in.
Yes.
So, and what happens, you have school systems, or you may have certain schools say, you know what, we don't want to do restorative practices, or we'll do it, but we're not going to do it with 100% fidelity. Why would a school or a school system either be reluctant to want to implement restorative practices, or at least do it with 100% fidelity?
Terry, this right here is not the normal way we are with one another. We don't take the time to sit and talk about what our problems are. We don't talk about what hurt us. We don't have conversations about the real us. Um, and it's just easier to just lash out. It's easier to go back to what you know. This work takes time. And who has time? Who has time in 24 hours? Who has the time? So a lot of school systems are focused on academia, the academic part, and students need to come to school knowing how to behave so we can get this academics in them. But with society being what it is today, we're teaching young people, like you said, who have experienced trauma. We have many more students who live below the poverty line. Yeah, you have this racial tension that we have. So we can't just use what we've always been using, because you see that it's really not effective today. So most schools who don't want to commit to doing the work with fidelity, um, first of all, won't take the time to self-reflect, because it takes a lot of self-reflection. And second of all, how do they view children? What are their beliefs around children and how children should be treated in an educational environment? You know,
And
um,
and you mentioned, and when you said that, it made me think of right now, and it literally just hit me
mhm,
with, whether people agree or disagree that students should be back in school, that's irrelevant. Because as a parent, if you want your child to be back in school, then your child will go back to school. If you don't, they won't. But here, in my opinion, is where I see the greater need for restorative practices. Why? Because they've been behind a computer for almost a year. So now they're saying, guess what? You're going back into your traditional setting. And some of them don't even, they're lacking the social skills, the conflict resolution, um, just the interaction with students. How much of a role, we'll put it like this, what do you see where students will have a significant decline if some form of restorative practice is not fully implemented, or the school system not even thinking about it? Right now they think about spraying off stuff, whatever, but I know these things are gonna, knock on wood, if it don't happen, it's a blessing. But you're gonna have people that are gonna argue, they're gonna fight, they're gonna yell, they're gonna get back to some sense of normalcy. And if anything, students should be fully obedient. But look, I'm not naive nor stupid. We don't live in utopia.
right.
They're gonna have a lot of energy to unleash.
Mhm.
And if the teachers aren't equipped, or the school system is not equipped with how to deal with it, because the only way they're gonna do it, you know what, you're gone. You're going back home doing virtual. That's really gonna be the only alternative.
I
So
heard that.
what is your take on that?
So a lot of people talk about restorative practices in terms of children. And restorative practices starts with the adults first.
Man,
So
say that
um,
again. When you say that again for the people who
yeah,
didn't hear.
restorative practices starts with the adults first, because adults need to learn how to be in good relationship with one another. Because students look at adults. Students model what they see. Children model what they see. So
Yes,
for me, I
yes.
think it's important for before our young people go back into the buildings, that our old people, so to speak, uh, come together and to kind of talk about their anxieties, talk about their concerns, talk about their fears around coming back and being in a school setting with so many children, with other people, in a school setting that may have had a case of COVID, you know. So that's very important. And then it's important for educators uh, to take the time and spend time getting to know their young people. Personally, I just don't believe that the young people need to go back into the schools and they get right into the education piece immediately in terms of, the books. There needs to be some time to, like you do the first week of school,
Yeah.
getting to know one another. Um, how do we want to be in this classroom together?
Setting your norm, your classroom norms, or
Agreements, like how,
and
how are we going to agree to be with each other for these last 2 months? you know,
and maybe the summer for some of them. Who knows? I don't know what the school systems are going to do,
right?
but
So
that to me is the quote unquote mental health piece.
mm-hmm.
If you don't, because no one has the funding right now to all of a sudden hire additional psychologists and all that. So why not use something that's already built? Teachers just have to get the buy-in, and it comes down to the adults. If the adults say, well, I ain't doing this stuff, then guess what? It's failed. It's failed. It's just that simple. But they're thinking of, I don't want to be here because of COVID. You got me coming here. And in some cases, I don't know what level of instruction they'll be given because they're going to be spaced out. You can't walk up to, hey, let me check your work. So I don't know if it's a matter of them sitting at the laptop babysitting them. I don't know. That's a whole different conversation. So before we close,
Yes.
if someone wants to be a restorative practitioner, how would they go about doing it?
Right. So you would first have to be trained. You would have to be trained in the history, the philosophy, the values, the principles of restorative justice and restorative justice practices. And to become a circle keeper or a circle facilitator, you would need to actually take the training in which you experience what it feels like to be in this type of space and to understand the processes and the rituals of a circle to be able to do it with other people in a way where it doesn't cause further harm. Because people have read books, maybe watched videos, and then they feel that they're ready to go in the classroom or ready to go into an organization and sit in circle with people. And they end up causing more harm than what was there at the very beginning. So you need to people need to experience what it feels like to be in this type of space before they, want to go out and start doing it, themselves. So it's very important. And you find a credible trainer, so to speak, someone who's been doing it for a while. And when I say a while, I mean a while, where they can actually, guide you and mentor you and train you to also be an amazing restorative practitioner.
Okay. So usually I do a closing segment at the very end, but I'm not going to do a closing segment at the very end because I really want you to hear what I'm going to say. And then when we do sign off, just stay on, because it's recording. But what I enjoyed about this particular show is that I disagreed with you a couple times. You would never know that. And I want the audience to really hear this because it's having civil conversations. You can agree to disagree without getting upset. I believe the SRO should be in school, and I believe if somebody does something violent, I don't arrest you. That's just me. You're gonna learn today. That's just my thing. But guess what? You're gonna get disciplined. You need to know why what you did was wrong and give you the resources to make yourself a better person. Let's see what's going on with you. But first, you need to realize you can't do this. The other thing that we disagreed with was, I wouldn't necessarily say restorative practices. What I would say is that it's not always going to work. That's just me. It all depends on the situation. It's just not always going to work. I'm just keeping it real. And it's easy, not necessarily for you, it's easy for somebody who's not in the school system to say, well, you should have done this and you should have done that. Were you there? Then don't tell me what I should have done because you weren't there. But someone like you who's been doing this for a while, you said, Mr. Terry, you could have said, you know what? What's going on? I could have slowed it down, which I have. Don't get me wrong. I learned that as I matured as a teacher, especially dealing with ED students. I wasn't going to feed you more fire. If you're yelling at me, I said, okay, when you finish cussing or whatever, let me know. I'll be sitting right here waiting for you. I'll be real mellow about it. Well, I'm going to do whatever. I said, look, man, can I finish my work? When you finish doing all that yelling, let me know. So it's almost like I wasn't taking them serious, because I wasn't. I only felt threatened one time. And that was literally a physical altercation that school police had to arrest him for. And I did press charges. He was 18 years old too. So that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to have you come back looking for me. You had to learn. And you were bold enough to trespass on school property to settle a beef with a teacher. That's on you. I forgot about it. I'm moving on. And then the other disagreement, and I'm trying to remember if I remember it. I can't remember the other one. But either way, you have disagreements. So what I will say is, and I'll give you the closing word. Well, second to closing word is that I learned a lot, and I hope that the viewers learned a lot in regards to restorative practices. And if Charles County if you're not using restorative practice to fidelity, here's someone that can help or guide you with it. If your school, if you're a concerned parent of a school and you know that school's off the chain, here, ask them if they have restorative practices and what it entails. Because if they give you a bunch of blah, 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 and it should be something that's written down so people can follow it so they know the steps.
Right.
So as I close, what is something that you would tell a parent of a child that another student has done something to them? Not saying they broke the law or anything like that, but they've done something to them. Because remember, a lot of parents come in this hot. What would you tell that parent to try to bring some peace?
Right. So I'm going to answer that question, and I wanted to make a comment based on your disagreement. So which would you like me to do first? Answer your question or make the comment based on your disagreement?
Do disagreement first.
Okay. So what I want to agree with you about your disagreement is when you said that restorative practices is not going to work in every situation. And one of the things that we have to remember is that there's research that says restorative practices works, but we have to understand that every child is unique, every situation is unique, and when you have a situation in which a young person decides that they don't want to engage in a restorative process, then you go to the next thing, which would be whatever other disciplinary program you have at your school. We know that there are some students, I know you mentioned your ED students, that have certain situations in which they need that special support. So restorative practices may be one piece that you could use, but we don't want to leave out anything that that young person may need around counseling, or anything that young person may need around psychological services, you know. So restorative practice does not take the place of any extra supports that some of our young people need. So we want to make sure that's clear, because a person would take that and run with it like, oh, it didn't work for that person, so it doesn't even work. When in reality, you may not have looked into other supports that the student needs. So I just wanted to address that for you. Now, in terms of talking to a parent, so you have parents who come in, they're hot and they want stuff done to this student. But if you have already had a conversation with parents of a school in which is supposed to be implementing restorative approaches, that means that parents will already have the knowledge that we're doing something different. Would this make the parent not come in angry? No, because that parent is human, and we're talking about that parent's baby. So they're going to come in hot, but that's the opportunity for the whoever's in charge of the climate and culture, or the principal, to take that parent to the side and say, okay, and allow that parent to vent and do whatever they need to do, and then explain, well, you know, we do restorative processes here, and there's an opportunity for us to sit down with the student, with their parent, and to have a restorative conference. Because sometimes you can have situations where you actually need a community conference, and you just invite that parent to sit in the space. And that parent could say yes, sit in the space, and sit in the space, arms crossed, legs crossed, upset, all get out. But if you go through the process in which you let that parent know that that parent needs are going to be heard, I mean, the parents' needs are going to be heard, the students' needs are going to be heard, and then that parent gets the opportunity to hear the other student talk about what happened, to hear what the other parent of the student talks about. The power of the circle allows for a lot of that tension to slowly come down. And that's how you would respond to a parent that is upset. Because being upset and angry and wanting this to happen, that's what we're used to. Look, you do something wrong that you can be arrested for, arrest them. That's what we want, because we're hurting. It's a violation of relationships. So, you know, that's a normal reaction. That's a normal reaction. And it's a valid reaction because you're hurting. And that's how you feel at this moment.
Okay, so definitely we are human, but the power of the circle can bring us to some sense of empathy.
It can.
Yeah. So, well, I definitely thank you for coming on the show. How can people reach you? Whether Facebook, website, email, how can people reach you?
Oh, well, I am on Facebook, the Restorative Classroom.
All right, Restorative Classroom, and it'll be on the posting. So it's Restorative Classroom. Okay,
And I'm also on IG.
that's Instagram, y'all.
Yep, Instagram, yep. The Restorative Collective.
So the Restorative Collective on IG. Okay, and is there an email address or anything?
Yes, it sure is. RLMCNAIR32. So it's RL McNair 32 at Gmail.
All right, so that's R Romeo Lima Mike Charlie November Alpha India Romeo 32 at gmail.com. Those, and it'll be on the post.
Right, and I'm actually right now working with a university in our area that's looking to bring restorative justice to the university. So
yeah, I would say those freshmen, incoming freshmen, and maybe sophomores, that they have some issues. It's almost like an extension of high school because it's changed from the time that I used to be in college. I would go on campus like, what the, for like, and I just hear the mouth and. But anyways, that's a topic for a whole different different day.
right.
Once again, it's been a pleasure that that you came on the show, took time out of your busy schedule
I
to
appreciate
really not only enlighten the viewers, but to also educate them and give them solutions. That these are solutions that we can use. And like my show says, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying. But if you're not willing to bring solutions to the table, I really don't care to hear from you. That's just me. That's just how it is. We don't have to agree.
Right.
But guess what? We'll find that we have more in common than we don't have in common. And that's one thing that I enjoy about the show and about guests, anybody who comes on. So, with that, we're going to say good night. Like I always tell my people, peace and blessings, and hang on as I shut this off. Y'all have a good night, y'all.
Good night.